The straight and narrow road plunged into a thick darkness, where summer leaves and long branches obscured the sliver of moonlight that might have otherwise illuminated the road before the curve. Bright halogen lights reflected off rust-covered guardrails as a gentle breeze swayed the green canopy above. It would have been almost relaxing if I had known my location. But the road's narrowness and the surrounding woods kept me on alert. Occasionally, a deer would peek out from the woods beside the road, validating my alertness. I was navigating what felt like a maze of deep southern greenery. Each mile reminded me of my regret for trusting Google's fuel-efficient route. But it was too late to turn back. The yellow lines on the cracked asphalt stretched further into the lush, overarching branches. I hadn't seen another car for miles, and was confined to the same songs I'd downloaded on Spotify, specifically for such occasions. Another sign with brown, rusted stains overtaking the little yellow that remained indicated a curve was approaching. I lifted my foot from the gas pedal, gently leaning into the turn. The only source of light came from my headlights, as my car seemed enveloped by the surrounding woods. My eyes caught a shadow dancing on the road below, a large figure scurrying, followed by a smaller one. At first, I thought it was a fawn and her baby, but they stood on two legs, hurriedly running onto the road. Then I saw it. The larger figure, with dark hair, quickly grabbed the smaller figure, clenching it tightly. I was coming too quickly to stop as I pressed my foot on the brake. The squeal of rubber and cracked asphalt screamed all around me. I was about to hit a woman and child. I was getting close enough to see the terror in their eyes. All three of us were locked in a sense of oncoming dread. I had to act fast. I grabbed the wheel and jerked it as hard as I could to the right. The sound of sticks, stones, and whatever else lay on the ground next to the road beat against the bottom of my car. It was the slowest and fastest event of my life, as I felt my body lift from the seat, battling the seatbelt. I watched my phone hop from the cup holder, smashing into the cracking windshield, and felt the pressure hit my chest like a punch to my heart. The airbag pushed into my body, sending my back colliding with the car seat. I felt all the air pushed out of my lungs, as if I had been hit in the stomach. The front of my car went forward, the metal crunching into what seemed like a creek bed. It was such a small, body of water. But I felt as if I were under it, as I heard a female wailing into the night. Then a voice cried out, "We have to get out of here!" My sight was blurry, but I could distinctly see her dark brown hair plastered to her soft-featured face. Her light gray tank top and sweats were covered in dirt and dead leaves. Her eyes were wide and frantic as she approached. A small figure tugged by their arm closely behind her. A small boy dressed in X-Men pajamas was also covered in dirt and leaves, just like the woman. She finally reached the car and began tugging on the door handle, as if the vehicle weren't sitting nose first in a small creek bed. She kept crying out, "We have to get out of here! We have to get out of here now!" The child rubbed his eyes, not sharing the same manic energy. The woman looked at me, her bloodshot brown eyes staring directly at me. I replied, "What the hell were you doing in the middle of the road? You almost got killed and almost killed me." "We have to get out of here. The house has become a nightmare," she screamed, even more manic than before. It took some effort, but I was finally able to push open the door. I stepped out with wobbly legs and a dull pain in my lower back. "How are we going to get out of here?" I answered, trying to shake off the adrenaline. The aches and the surreal feeling that I had just wrecked a car. "Look at the car. We aren't going anywhere." "Your phone! You have to have a phone!" I reached into my pocket and felt nothing. Then I remembered seeing it fly away, as if it had bounced off a trampoline. I darted quickly back to the totaled car and began searching frantically for it. It had to be in here somewhere. I shuffled through the wreckage in the darkness as I heard the woman hovering nearby, mumbling incoherently. Where the hell is it?" I asked aloud as I continued to search. I moved over to the passenger side, which had also apparently deployed the airbag, as I'd not noticed from everything else that had happened. I felt around the floorboards until I found something with a familiar shape. I sighed with relief, but only momentarily. As I looked at the cracked screen, I desperately tried to swipe or press any available button. The screen flickered and buzzed, but wouldn't let me do anything. "Did you find it?" the woman asked excitedly. "I did, but I don't think it's going to help us much." "We have to get out of here. We have to get out of here now. It's not safe here." "What do you mean, it's not safe?" "We had to get away." "Get away from what?" I asked. "Is someone chasing you?
I don't know. I haven't seen anything since we left.
Left where? Where did you come from?
My house,
she said, sounding almost defeated. I was puzzled by this response. The boy started to sniffle. It seemed the very mention of their home invoked an emotion. I looked at the woman again, her eyes widening with panic.
It happened so fast. I had to get us out of there. We couldn't get to Granddad either,
the boy said, again, tears running down his face. Well, do you have a phone? I asked.
It's the house. I had to get out there as quickly as possible.
Why? I asked. Did someone break in? She shook her head. Did a fire happen? She shook her head again. I was confused. Why did this woman run out of her house and into the middle of the road late at night? The boy had mentioned something about his grandfather being left behind as well. What about the kid's grandfather? I asked inquisitively.
I tried to get my dad, but I couldn't. I was barely able to get my son out before it happened.
Before what happened?
The house, it changed. It started with a loud noise. It sounded like metal grinding against it. It felt like we were stuck in a machine. The noises that started to come from the wall, it happened so fast I panicked and got my son first. But before I could get...
She sounded distraught. What do you mean it changed? I asked, watching her close her eyes as if reliving the moment. The boy squeezed her around her hip, trying to comfort her as tears streamed down her face.
The sounds were terrifying, but what was worse was watching metal pieces burst through the wall. The grinding noise kept getting louder and louder, and that's when I ran to get my son.
They came through your walls? I asked, raising an eyebrow in skepticism. A hint of anger crept into my voice as I realized I might have totaled a car and died because of a woman's apparent hallucination? Like you actually saw pieces of metal coming through your walls? She nodded. Even through her tears, I could tell she noticed that I didn't believe her. The boy remained clenched onto her as the three of us stood in silence for a minute. No phone, definitely no car, and out in the middle of nowhere. I had to do something. Where is your house? I asked, her eyes lighting up with terror. She began to breathe heavily, as if on the brink of a panic attack. Even if she was experiencing a mental breakdown, I saw no other option but to go to her house and call for help, given my own dire situation.
We can't go back,
she screamed.
We have to just get out of here.
How are we supposed to do that? I snapped. My phone is broken. And if you haven't noticed, this car isn't going anywhere.
We can signal for help.
Lady, you can stay here and signal for help. But if you truly want to get out of here, I can go find a phone at your house, bring it back, and we can call for help for all of us. I don't know if my words finally got through to her, or if it was simply desperation on her part to escape, but she fell silent for a moment. The boy muttered,
Maybe we can make sure Granddad is okay?
She nodded and said,
We aren't going back, but the house is across the road. You'll see a small gravel road.
I began to walk toward the edge of the creek bed, carefully watching my steps as I made my way up to the road. I turned back to the two and said, Stay here and try to signal for help. But do it from the side of the road. I worked my way up to the road and took a deep breath. I looked around for a moment, but spotted a small, rocky road among the trees and began to walk. I found something strange about the silence as I felt the gravel crunch beneath my feet on the woman's way to the house. It was eerily quiet. Not even the sound of a bug chirping in the night, or the crunch of a critter wandering the woods. I began to walk up a small hill where I could see a structure in the distance. It was 2 stories and painted a creamy white. It stood on a meticulously maintained yard with low grass and brick flower beds decorated with a variety of colorful flowers. Even in the darkness, I could see bright colors swaying in the light night breeze. I stood outside the house, observing a single white light flickering from one of the windows on the 2nd story. It seemed as though someone had left a television on, or a bulb was going out. I walked onto the porch, the creak of the floorboards beneath my weight howling into the silent night as I approached the front door. A light thud came from it as I neared, as if someone were knocking from the other side. "Hello? I've been in an accident," I said. "Are you the granddad?" Another thud echoed from the other side of the door. It matched the first thud in force and tone. I stood silently by the white door, only to hear another monotonous thud a few seconds later. I found it strange that another one followed, and then another. "Is anyone there?" I said, reaching for the door handle, just as another perfectly timed thud hit the door. Turning the doorknob didn't get very far. It was locked, and another thud followed a few seconds later. Even if I could push it open, I felt the entrance would be blocked. I stepped away from the door and looked around the porch for a window. I stepped over to take a peek, but saw nothing but pitch black, and heard only the monotonous thudding sound coming from the room. I wasn't going to get very far with this entrance. I began to circle the house, looking for any other doors. As I made my way to the back, I saw a small door that seemed to lead to a cellar and a back door. The cellar door was wide open, and I wondered if that was how the mother and child had exited the house before running to the road. It sat there open, the door resting on a bed of green grass. I walked to the back door first, though. I felt it was the right move, considering I was essentially walking into a stranger's house and didn't want to be treated like an intruder. The stairs leading down were made of concrete and didn't creak like the front porch, but they produced a similar thud at the door. Each thud was perfectly timed, following another within seconds. It wasn't promising as I knocked on the door, to no avail. I stood there, thinking as I stared at the wide open cellar door. I walked towards it, peering inside to see a faint light coming from the pit of wooden stairs. My nerves rattled at the very idea of entering a stranger's home from their cellar. But I relented, realizing I didn't have much of a choice. "Hey, is anyone there?" I said, carefully stepping inside. My foot pressed into the wood, releasing a loud creak that echoed through the dimly lit entrance. I continued to descend further down, each step getting louder and more unnerving before I could see a concrete floor covered in dirt below. It smelled musty, and the walls were bare concrete, with shelves lined with tools, notebooks, and mason jars full of preserves and other canned food. I saw a small light dangling from the ceiling, burning brightly to illuminate the room, and a workshop full of tools, with small parts and tools scattered along the painted black wood tabletop. A nice watch sat amidst the disorganization of tools, small gears, and even smaller springs. That's when I heard another thud, though. This one was different. It almost sounded like metal grinding, and it made me think of what the woman had said before. I looked around to see another staircase that looked like it led into the house. But on the wall were two huge gears, slowly turning as if they were struggling. They turned slowly and almost methodically as I walked over to them. The brass color gleamed when the light hit them. They turned slowly, and between the teeth, I could see the red and brown rust. As I turned my head, I could see they were connected to even more gears leading up the staircase. My mind began to race as I tried to understand what I was seeing. Were these decorations? But something broke my thoughts as I heard footsteps. Not the same monotonous thuds, but heavy footsteps coming from above. Someone else was here. "Hey!" I cried out. I was in an accident, and the owner of the house sounds like she needs help, too." I started climbing the stairs. The only sound was the sound of gears moving as I saw a wooden door half open. "Hello!" I yelled out again, being cautious as I placed my hand on the door and gently pushed it open to see what looked to be a kitchen table. A small basket of fruit sat in the middle. It looked and felt normal briefly. The familiar sound of grinding gears greeted me as I stepped into the room. I looked for where they were and was shocked to see. To my astonishment, the ceiling was adorned with a mesmerizing array of gears, each with its own unique shape and size. Some gears turned with a graceful ease, while others labored under the strain, their movements accompanied by a discordant screech. The kitchen was like it was split between worlds. One that was what you would expect, cabinets full of shelves, walls adorned with little knickknacks. But the other half was covered with gears that drifted down to the ceiling, taking over the walls. It was surreal to witness as I scanned my surroundings, trying to comprehend what my eyes were seeing. I heard the footsteps again, their source still a mystery. I began to look around the room, searching for an opening that might lead to another room. My gaze fell upon a narrow entrance where a tall figure stood, motionless, its back turned to me. The figure was slender and imposing, sending a shiver down my spine. Fear gnawed at me, and my breathing grew heavy as I confronted yet another unknown in this room filled with enigmatic gears. "Excuse me," I managed to whimper. But the figure didn't respond. Even in the darkness, I noticed its head tilt up, looking above it. However, its reaction was unlike mine. It didn't seem to be afraid of the unfolding chaos in this house that seemed to be made of gears. Instead, it appeared to be analyzing the situation as it began to step away slowly, watching the spectacle. "Hey!" I shouted with more force than the weak tone I had used before. as the figure still seemed to be ignoring me. It disappeared into the darkness with the same methodical turning of the gears. I slowly walked towards the entrance and peered inside. But the mysterious figure had completely vanished. All that was left was a room filled with even more gears. They clung tightly to the ceiling, all turning in a synchronized dance. Some showed signs of wear, with rust staining the brass. The walls were also lined with similar shapes and teeth, all turning in unison. As I cautiously walked into the room, I noticed that outside of the gears was a living room furniture set. An older blue couch sat in the middle of the room, with a dark brown coffee table covered in mail. I don't know how I was able to hear it outside the sound of the gears, but I heard heavy footsteps coming from the second story. Who or whatever it was upstairs? I shuffled around in the darkness and noticed the staircase, gears on the banister, and along the walls leading upstairs. A light was flickering up there, most likely the one I saw from outside. I carefully began to walk up the stairs. The gears ground more menacingly the higher I got. They screeched and howled, and I heard something else. It sounded as if someone was talking. I finally reached the second story to see a hall lined with gears. Almost at a standstill, turning slowly, and not as easily as the ones I had witnessed before. All doors were closed but one, and from that door, a light poured out into the hall, its color changing. Slowly, I made my way to the source of light when I heard the voice clear as day, saying, "It has to be here, somewhere." When I reached the door, I saw the figure again, slowly looking around the room. His head was covered in gray, and his face was wrinkled from age. He was dressed in striped pajamas, strolling around the room, looking for something. He didn't seem like a stranger to the house. It had to be the grandfather. "I can fix it. I've always been able to fix it," the old man said loudly to himself, still not paying any mind to the fact that I was looking at him. He began to pace back and forth across the room, looking at the gears on the ceiling and walls. "It has to be in this room. I don't know why I didn't look in here in the first place." "Excuse me," I interrupted the man, who turned around. His eyes were a deep green, dark circles under his eyes, and his arms and hands looked frail. He didn't seem shocked to see me. As I stepped into the room, the source of light revealed to be a television playing infomercials on mute, sitting across from a small brown leather recliner. "Did you find it?" he asked curiously. "Find what?" "What's making all this ruckus? It has to be in this room." "I just need to use a phone. Can you tell me where it is?" I asked as he stopped for a moment, looking at a spot on the wall where the gears were barely turning and making a rattling noise. "Can you please help me?" "I can't, not until I fix it. I'm going to prove them all wrong and show that I still got it." "Please, there is a mother and her son scared out of their mind outside. And I was just in a wreck," I shouted as he moved to the wall, observing more intently, studying each motion of the teeth of the gears and how they moved. "Jen and Tommy will understand." "They will understand what?" "That I am still here," he shouted at me angrily, without taking his eyes off the wall full of gears. I moved closer to him to try to see what he was looking at. "The doctor said my mind is gone, but I'm still here, damn it." "I don't understand," I said confusedly, but the man's focus didn't leave the wall. It was like he was transfixed, undeterred by my situation. The gears he was looking at were the most worn and rusted I had seen throughout the house. Each one struggled to make the slightest of motions. "Alzheimer's," he replied, frustrated. "That's what they said I have. They all think I just sit up here and watch TV all day. But here is my chance to fix the problem. I've always been able to fix it. I repaired watches for over 45 years. What can I do to get you to help me?" I cried angrily. "Just help me find the problem." "Fine," I said, looking at the area the man was studying intently. I scanned the area, but had no idea what I was looking for. But I relented, because the man wasn't going to help me until he figured out what was happening. "What am I looking for?" "Anything that would tell you what is causing this damn rattling." I looked around. There were so many rusted gears on the wall. They were like the rest of the house in a variety of sizes, some with many teeth, while others had few. It was like trying to find a needle in a haystack when you didn't even know what a needle looked like. Then I noticed something, a louder rattle than the others in the middle of the wall. It was a gear, the most rusted one I had seen, and it was missing some of the teeth. It only had a few that would occasionally hit another rusted gear that seemed to be cracking in the center. "I think I found it." "Where?" the old man asked as he came closer. I pointed at the gear, and his eyes lit up for a second before dimming. His demeanor went from determined to sullen. "That would be where it is." "Can you fix it?" I asked as I watched him back away from the wall and turn around, walking towards the center of the room in silence. He stood there for a minute as if he was deeply thinking of a solution, or at least trying to come up with one. After a moment, he sighed and looked at the recliner before taking a seat, his head pointed at the floor. I walked over to the man, his eyes still directed at the floor below him. I could see tears coming from his face, hitting the floor below. "Can you fix it?" I asked again, with a hint of desperation in my voice. "No, I don't think I can. The gears are too damaged, and I don't have the right ones to replace them anymore," he said, shaking his head and sitting up straight in the recliner. "Then what are you going to do, old man?" I asked, my desperation turning into anger. "I need to get a phone. You said if I helped you, you would help me." He didn't reply though. His head moved towards the side of me, and he stared into oblivion. "Hey! I need you to tell me where the phone is," I shouted. But he didn't say anything. He was transfixed again, but I didn't know what. I turned to see what he was staring at, noticing an episode of MASH was now playing on television. The old man's gaze didn't leave the TV. I snapped my fingers in front of his face, and it seemed to break through the distraction for a moment. "You aren't my usual nurse," the old man said, his voice cracking and almost childish. "Where is Delia?" I didn't know what to say. Gone was the confident man who thought he could fix the problem before, and all that was here was a man who seemed confused. Something else was strange too. The rattling was gone. The sound of gears turning throughout the house was absent. As I looked above and at the walls, I saw that the ceiling was a bare white, the walls another shade of cream, and pictures hanging on the walls of a woman and her child. "Today is Delia's day off, sir," I said calmly and gently. "Can you tell me where her phone is? I need to make a phone call." He nodded and said, "Jenny keeps her phone on her nightstand when she comes home." "Where is her room, if you don't mind me asking?" "Next door over," he said, pointing at the hallway before becoming silent and staring at the television again. I walked out of the room, turning to the next room. It was quiet throughout the house now, as I pushed open the door to see a cell phone sitting on a small table next to a bed, with the sheets on the floor from the panic of the man's daughter earlier. I grabbed the phone and turned back to the hallway, walking down the stairs back to the living room. I carefully walked through the house, looking around before I left. But it seemed just like a plain house. Nothing was out of place. Nothing was uniquely special about it. But there was one big difference. The gears were gone.